Alright, welcome back. Today's video is going to be a topic that I'm sure has been covered across YouTube by many different people, and so I'm sure that they've given you a lot of experiences, but I think that I provide my own little insight into this topic in particular. So I'm going to be talking about studying for exams in undergrad versus in medical school, right? So the reason I think is that I can provide a little bit more insight on, or a different thought, is because I have worked out, and I do work out, a lot more than what a normal person would do. And so if your goal is somewhat fitness oriented, if you think you don't have time, and if you have some time management skills that you think could improve, or you want to be able to work out and you still have all this responsibility, there is a way to do it. Don't be fooled if someone tells you you can't. You have to give up on that in order to excel academically. That's BS. That's not true. In order to make a fair comparison between undergrad as well as medical school exams, I've broken my studying down into 3 components. And so this is resources that I use to study, retention, and how did I retain the information when I studied, and then the time frame, when did I start studying. Studying for undergrad went something like this, right? So I'm representing undergrad with a U, and what resources did I use? I used their PowerPoints, right? So the PowerPoints were the golden standard. That's what I used. That's what most of the time was used to test me. Almost never did I ever actually read a book, okay? That's not how I work. If you really like and enjoy reading books and you get a lot out of it, and that's how you learn, then that's how you learn. For me, it was a waste of 4 hours to read one chapter. So it just wasn't worth it for me. It's fine. How did I retain the information? I would rewrite it. So as I was going through the PowerPoints, I would rewrite the information over and over and over again until I knew this step, this mechanism, for example. Or, so this is a dumb example for, let's say I was doing glycolysis or gluconeogenesis or even the Krebs cycle. I would rewrite it over and over until I essentially knew it. I had memorized it in a way. And I would start studying around 1 to 2 weeks in advance, all right? But here's a trick, or here's the main difference. This is when I would study 1 to 2 weeks in advance. However, during that time of class starting, or the start of the semester till the first exam, I almost had nothing, or rarely did I have things to do. Of course, I had other responsibilities that I had to do, but in terms of pure studying, it really just came down to 1 to 2 weeks before the exam. So if the exam was literally in every 8 weeks, I only studied for like 2 weeks. And the other times I was listening in class, maybe I had a couple dumb assignments that I had to do, for completion, things like that. But in reality, there was not that much studying. Of course, there was a very concentrated period of studying where it felt like I was dying, and that was when I had to study for exams. But other than that, it was very relaxed, very laid back, and I had a lot of other type of responsibilities that I had to do, like work, like research, like volunteering. And those took priority, or not priority, but those took a lot of my time that I could have been using to relax. Now for the medical school portion, and I want to take a step back and explain how studying works. Every day we have a set of objectives before we go to class. That objective usually accomplished by a couple of PowerPoints or some videos that are on YouTube, or any sort of material that we need to accomplish those objectives are put on our blackboard. The idea is that we review that material and then go to class to learn and reinforce. If I cannot get through the material, I do not go to class, because it's not worth my time, because it goes at such ridiculous pace that I will get more out of just sitting down and doing the learning objectives, or accomplishing the learning objectives and taking notes on it, than I will going there, not understanding anything, having to come home and then do the learning objectives and then go and rewatch the video of their lecture because I didn't understand it the first time. So my studying is not just at the end, 1 to 2 weeks before the exam. It's essentially always. Those learning objectives that I'm doing, that is a form of studying. I'm writing down and taking down those notes in my computer, and I'm doing that, right? And then at the end of the week, there's a quiz. And that weekly quiz, will then quiz us on our material. While this quiz is not a great indication of how much you've learned, it does give you a sense of idea of what was important in that week. Do my notes cover what was important? Because if they don't, I better go back and I better fix that. To study for that quiz essentially is to prepare for the exam in a way. And every single day that you prepare and I do the learning objectives, I'm essentially studying for the exam. And so that's something that's very, very different to undergrad. And how I study for that weekly quiz is simple. Every single day I do the learning objectives Monday through Friday. At the end of Friday, I will then review all the PowerPoints again. So PowerPoints, all the videos, anything that I need to do, I'll review them. I also have this book. It's called, First Aid. This book is life-saving. It's one of the best books that I'll come across because it condenses a lot of the information that we learn, gives you very, very neat charts that you can just use as opposed to read through 70 PowerPoint slides trying to explain the same scenario. After reading the corresponding chapters or pages in First Aid that goes along and using that again as a study material, I also make sure that I rewrite the information. When I say rewrite the information, I really meant rewrite the information. So this is an example, and so I'm going to show you through some of the notes, and I just go through it. And so here you have cyclooxygenase, and I'm leading how it generates prostaglandins and thromboxanes, and as you keep going through it, you realize that this is one of the forms that I study by rewriting everything. And so here we have, myelopoiesis and myeloproliferative diseases, as well as lymphomas and even pathways like B12 and cycling. So this is one way that I study for the quiz. Since the quiz opens on Friday and closes around Sunday, I then have done all this rewriting and all this reviewing of information Friday, Saturday, and then I take it on Sunday. After taking it on Sunday, I then prepare for Monday, and that's how my week goes. 2 to 3 weeks before my exam, my big block exam, and I then start studying extra hard, where I start implementing different tactics, where I start reviewing information from the first week, right? And so I briefly want to explain how it works for my medical school. In my medical school, our entire first 2 years are divided into 9 blocks. Every single block varies in weeks or time length. It could be 4 weeks or it could be 9 weeks, 10 weeks even. It really depends. At the end of the amount of time for that block, though, there is one exam for all the material that you have learned. And so if you have to pass this exam to pass the block, if you do that, then you pass, and that's it. So we have one exam per block, very stressful time, but at the same time, we don't have any other exams. So all our pharmacology is in that exam, all our biochemistry, all our pathology, all our any other thing that you could think of is going to be on that exam thrown at you at the same time. And it's a good thing because that's how it's going to be when you take your step 1. And this is the whole point of the medical school curriculum, is to prepare us to do well. But as I was mentioning before, 2 to 3 weeks before the big exam, I then start reviewing information. So keep in mind, I still have to continue to do the learning objectives of every week. But then go back and we start reviewing the PowerPoints. We start reviewing the first aid. We start using Anki or osmosis flashcards to remember some things. In particular, I like to use those for things that are pure memorization. Things like pharmacology in particular. So cancer drugs, immunosuppressants, antiviral, antifungal, antibacterial. There are a whole bunch of drugs. And then you have to learn all the mechanisms for that drug and how it works and a side effect of that drug. All of those things to me are pure memorization, and that's how I deal with it. Things that are pure memorization, this is how I deal with it. Things that are big concepts, I deal with rewriting to understand a certain thing and how it works. If you think about it, we are reviewing the information a lot of times, and that's my method of studying. My method of studying is the more times that I see this information, the more comfortable I'm going to be with it, the more likely I am to have a higher retention and actually learn it and remember it a year from now, as opposed to like, oh, I'm going to study it in 2 days or in a week, and then after that I'm going to do great on the exam, and then after that I really am not going to remember anything. That does me no good, right? So we need this information to save people's lives. My exams are always on a Friday, so that Monday through Thursday leading up to that exam on Friday, there is no class. That is time that you can use however you want. In my opinion, the best thing to do is to study. So obviously, what I do is I divide the material again, right? So let's say that it was a block that was 8 weeks. So that means that there's 8 chapters, 8 weeks of material that I need to cover. If I cover 2 weeks a day of material, then ideally I will be done covering it in 4 days, right? So 4 days. So if this is 4 days is equal to 8 weeks, right? Then I've now covered everything that I need to cover to know technically for the exam. At that point, I will then do practice exam questions. So there's plenty of resources to get these questions, and these questions are super invaluable because they give you what you don't know, right? So if my preparedness only got me to answer 20% of the questions, clearly I didn't do a good job at studying, right? And so I need to know where I need to focus on. What didn't I get? What do I know? What I know I don't need to touch anymore, or I don't need to touch that much, right? But if I don't know cancer really well, if I'm getting all the cancer questions wrong, but I'm getting all the biochemistry questions right, then biochemistry is not my weakest link. That's not something I want to focus on as much as I want to do with cancers. So then the practice questions are a good indication of what are your weaknesses and what you should study and focus on. So after I do the practice exam questions, I then go back and review all the material again, but this time at a much quicker pace. Very, very, very fast. Last time I did it in 4 weeks. I did 4 days for 8 weeks. This time I want to do something like 2 days for all 8 weeks, and really focus on what I don't know. Having finished the 2 weeks and 2 days, I would then go back to do more practice questions and individually review things that I keep getting wrong over and over and over again. At this point, I would feel pretty comfortable with my knowledge and feel prepared for the exam. Alright guys, here's my disclaimer. I've only been in medical school for 1 semester, so I don't really know how effective it's going to be as I keep going through my education. I also do want to note that I really didn't get to implement it as well as I wanted to for the previous exam. So I've had 2 exams and I didn't get to implement it in the previous exam as well as I had hoped, but I definitely will be implementing it in the future. I still passed, but there were definitely some points where I didn't do as well, where I didn't do what I said I was going to do, and part of it is because of poor planning. I didn't know what I was going to do, and so I only implemented it like a couple of weeks in advance, not throughout the entire block. Having been said that, I didn't come up with this on my own. This is kind of what I thought would really work, and I had help from a significantly smarter M4 than me, and this M4 went through a lot, and he did amazingly well on all his step 1 and step 2, so he knows what he's doing, and yeah, he knows what he's doing, and he helped me kind of craft this because this is kind of my learning style and my learning philosophy, which it aligned very well with his. And I do want to just throw it out there that it is somewhat new and it takes a lot of practice to implement it correctly. So I'm hoping that I implement it as well as I am telling you guys about it in the near future. Any questions that you do have, make sure to comment, like the video if you like the video, and dislike the video obviously if you dislike the video, and make sure that you subscribe if you're interested on updates and everything like that, and I'll catch you guys next time.